Hello Malaysia and welcome to Medical Today. I'm Jared Rudnam. Now, a lot of people say that Malaysia as a country is one of the fattest nations in ASEAN, just to put it crudely. Now, this talk or this conversation that's been ongoing about our health and how we're fast becoming fat as a nation is something that's being talked about a lot with the Ministry of Health, and they're coming up with various measures and steps to ensure that we keep this in check. Now, we spoke to Norhana Nawawi Suri, the General Manager for Customer Care from Pharmaniaga, with regards to obesity in Malaysia, and we have a short interview for you with regards to that. Let's take a look at this interview. Stay with us. Hello Malaysia, and thank you very much for staying with us right here on Medical Today. Malaysia is a fat nation. As crude as that sounds, that is backed up by facts. Now, report shows that 49% of women and 44% of men in this country are found to be obese or were found to be obese. Now, this can be a big problem with regards to diabetes, heart attacks, non-communicable diseases, so to speak. Prevention, they always say, is better than cure. And to talk about this, or to give us more of an insight on this, I'm joined by Norhana Nawawi Suri, the General Manager for Customer Care at Pharmaniaga, right here on Medical Today. Norhana, thank you very much for joining us. Now,
thank you. Yes.
It is a big problem in our nation, talking about being obese or
yes.
being big, or some people that go as far as saying that some of us are fat now.
Yes.
That's crude. But there is a difference between obesity and overweight. Being overweight and being obese,
okay.
There is a difference. Can
yes.
you walk us through these differences?
Right. So basically, I explained to you the similarity because overweight and obesity caused by abnormal or accumulative of fat in the body, right? And you define one person as overweight when the BMI is more than 25 and obese with BMI more than 30. So have you checked your BMI?
No, I haven't checked my BMI, but you know, we are so good with acronyms in this country. So what does
yes.
BMI stand for?
BMI is actually a body mass index. Okay, it's actually measure the fat in your body.
So when you look at me, do you think I fall under overweight or obese or just
maybe borderline, but
borderline.
Yeah, we can check later.
Which means we always have to be careful because
yes.
you never know when you're going to hit that borderline and still think you're slim. So a BMI is a good indicator. Now, when you talk about the categories of different weights, and when you look at obesity, what causes obesity or what causes one to become obese?
Yeah, I would like to share with you 4 points on how someone can become obese or overweight. First, it's actually the most common reason is because of unhealthy food that you take, right? And the second reason is due to the unbalanced diet. For example, you skip your breakfast, you take heavy lunch, or you skip your lunch, you take heavy dinner. So that is one of the reasons which can cause obesity. And the third reason is because lack of physical activity. Right. We are so much into our gadget, our technology, and we sit down, and most of the time we are on the desk. So that is the third reason for somebody to become overweight or obese. And the fourth reason, which is somehow not very popular, is lack of sleep. So, you don't realize that if you have lack of sleep, there is a tendency that someone can become obese or can become overweight. Yeah.
Now, do you see this trend going upward? Do you see this trend increasing in the near future, perhaps from top of the charts in Asia to world dominance in obesity? Not that we want to get there, but do you see this coming towards us?
Yes, I think the trend is increasing, especially when the data that was shown either at international or local level, our own data from the Ministry of Health, the National Health and Mobility Survey, shows the same trend. So we have to do something to stop or to prevent this from escalating.
Right. So before we even talk about doing something, let's talk about the effects of obesity on just an individual's health. You know, whether it's a guy or a girl, is it different? Yeah.
Yes. Based on the National Health and Mobility Survey, the overweight part it's more towards the men, right?
Right.
But for the
How unfortunate. Yeah.
So, but the obese is more for the female.
Right.
So, yeah, it's somehow divided in that manner. But again, if you look at ethnicity or race, somehow Indian being the highest percentage on becoming obese or
talk about
overweight.
Discrimination.
Yes.
Yeah.
And followed by Malays and Indian. But the gap is not that huge, you know,
Right.
very close. So.
But obesity does discriminate. Having said that, you know, when it comes to children, we say we can curb this,
Yes.
but and we have ascertained that this comes from basically a sedentary lifestyle.
Yes, correct.
Okay,
Yep.
so now that we've ascertained that, what can we do other than moving around to ensure that we stay away from being obese?
Yeah, I think for the child, it's very important, first of all, like you say, the parents play the role to control the food and also to always give, try to give healthy food, more fruits and vegetables for the children, and promotes them to do more outdoor activities, go out with them, go to the playground together. So that is the main thing that the parents need to do.
But the bigger problem here, and when you talk about obesity or just becoming overweight, is sugar.
Yes.
Now, sugar comes in different forms.
Correct.
Now, if you're giving children fruits, fructose is also sugar.
Yes.
So is there a point where we draw the line?
Yes, because in terms of sugar, the contribution of fruits, sugar, and the sugar itself is different. So in order for you to manage a childhood obesity or overweight problem, you have to actually cut down the calorie intakes which come from the sugar and also other sweetery or other pastry and sweet things that the children love to eat.
Right.
So the first thing is actually cut down the calorie, and that will help actually to reduce the rate of obesity.
Right.
Yeah.
Usually when we talk about obesity, we're always talking about keeping a child away from obesity or making sure they have a good diet. Now, if you already have a child who is a little big and you want to make sure you bring his or her health back to normal, what are the things you need to look at? You know how children love to eat
Yes.
junk food. So that's something that should be kept away.
Yes, kept away. Discipline as well, to train them to eat at the right time. Don't skip breakfast, because breakfast is the most important meal of the day.
Right.
Because study has found...
Should it be the biggest meal of the day?
Yes, in fact, breakfast is the king of all the meal. So I think we have to emphasize on having good breakfast, right? Then after that, dinner, it can't be, shouldn't be taken later than 8 o'clock. No going out at 10 o'clock to the mamak stall and having some mee goreng, whatever. Try to reduce that. So that is one of the way which
Right.
able to help. Yeah.
With Malaysia being one of the biggest countries in Asia at this point, when we look at our diet, it's always going back to the carbs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when we look at our diets, rice plays a very important role.
Yep.
Now they say, in order to have enough energy through the day, you need to ensure that you have enough glucose in your blood
Yes,
and
correct.
not overflood your system with sugar.
Yep.
Now, with a big breakfast like, say, nasi lemak and a coffee,
Yep.
then you suddenly see a crash at 10 a.m. You know, you eat at 8 a.m., at 10 a.m. you crash. What's happening here?
I think you have to look at the portion as well. It's not only the calorie, but the portion. So on your plate, you have to ensure that half of the plate is vegetable and fruits, and another 1/3 is all the carbohydrate, and 1/3 is protein. So you have to have balance. Then only your body will able to cope and will able to help you in your weight management as well.
Now, with eating right, a lot of people are also looking at different things. There's intermittent fasting. There's so many things,
Yep.
coming up, newfangled things. as we speak. But a lot of people see that throughout the day, keeping your blood levels or blood sugar levels normal is very important.
Yes.
Now, with regards to dieting, a lot of people see a crash, like they get weak because they stay away from carbs. We are so used to carbs.
Yes.
What's your advice to those of us who want to stay away from carbs but keep our levels, our energy levels up there all the time?
You shouldn't do a drastic change to a diet. You have to do it step by step, right? You have to actually ensure that you eat the right portion and the right calorie at the right time. So that is the whole thing that you need to monitor, and you have to be disciplined in order for you to control the glucose level throughout the day.
So controlling the glucose level throughout the day is one thing. Now, for friends who are fasting, okay, keeping the glucose levels throughout the day is very important.
Yes.
What's your advice to friends who usually go on a fast, whether it's because of the fasting month or whether they're adhering to a fasting diet?
Yeah. So in fasting, you have to ensure that you actually eat during the sahur. You have to ensure you eat a sufficient meal during the sahur for you to sustain throughout the day. And come to the buka puasa time, you have to ensure that you don't overeat.
Right.
Yeah, you eat the
So
right portion.
when you're breaking your fast at
Yeah.
any point of the day, you shouldn't overeat.
Overeat, yes.
But this is not necessarily so for breakfast when you wake up in the morning.
Yep.
Or only when you're fasting, saying during the fasting month,
Yep.
it's very important that you ease your body into the eating system.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
So when you ease your body, what's the simplest way of explaining this?
So because in fasting, you have to ensure that the glucose level is sustained throughout the day. But at night, when you break your fast, the glucose level can suddenly shoot up.
Which is dangerous.
Which is dangerous. And overeating also can cause lethargic and tired. So you have to actually control the portion that you eat.
Right. Now, for some of us, we want to try to stay away from sugar, and we try all these alternatives. A lot of people are talking about stevia at this point. What kind of advice can you give us about stevia?
Because the one of the main cause of diabetes is because of high calorie intakes, right? Come from sugar. So for people who like sweet things, they actually can go for alternative stevia because it is actually a natural sweetener and it contains almost 0 calorie. So you can cut down the calorie intake, but still having the sweetness of the whatever you are having, the dessert, ice cream or whatever. So reduce the calorie through stevia because it's a natural and it's actually safe to be taken. Yeah.
Right. If there's one piece of advice you're going to give us with regards to obesity or with regards to being overweight, what's that one piece of advice you tell everyone all the time?
You have to, first thing, I believe that you have to eat the right portion of food. It doesn't mean that you can't eat roti canai. It doesn't mean you can't eat nasi lemak, but you have to eat the right portion of the food. Yeah, and on top of that, exercise is also play important roles. So the two things is very important.
So eat at the right times, eat the right food, and always lead a healthy lifestyle by doing exercise. As cliche as this sounds, this is very important. We'd like to thank Norhana Nawawi Suri, the General Manager for Customer Care at Pharmaniaga, for joining us right here on Medical Today. It was a pleasure and an honor speaking to you and getting some advice off you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Jared.
much. Stay with us right here on Medical Today. I'm Jared Rotnam.
Brings you the latest in current affairs, lifestyle and entertainment, as well as one-on-one discussions with fascinating personalities. Only on Norhana News Channel.
Gain insights from the people with the capacity to translate vision into reality. Interviews with corporate leaders at 8:30 p.m. Monday, only on BNC.
Do you know what really happens to your mobile e-waste? Throwing them into the dustbin will only result in choking the landfills. Did you know that over 42 million mobile e-waste are not properly disposed of? And this amount will continue to grow. This will potentially cause toxic chemicals to seep into the ground. The environment will slowly be polluted, thus creating a multitude of health problems to us humans. Did you know that 90% of the materials used to make mobile phones and their accessories can be recovered and recycled? These can be reused to make anything and everything, including electrical goods. Well, the good news is MCMC has initiated a mobile e-waste campaign. MCMC, along with telecommunications companies, have set up collection areas for the public to safely dispose their mobile e-waste at participating outlets. With 72 outlets nationwide, including TM, U-Mobile, Maxis, DG, Celcom and Altel, you can now dispose your e-waste easily and at your convenience. Join us to get 1 million recycled mobile e-waste for this campaign. Make a difference for a better world, better environment and better future. For more information, log on to mobileewaste.mcmc.gov.my. This initiative is brought to you by the Malaysian communications industry together with MCMC.
Hello and welcome back to Medical Today. I'm Jared Ratnam. From what we spoke about a while ago, let's move into the knees. Now, most of us are sportsmen, and as sportsmen, now and again we have problems with our knees, but some people are of the opinion that sports are bad for your knees. Now, to delve into this and to give us more of an insight as to what this is all about, we have joining us in the studio Dr. Sivakumar Ariratnam, a consultant orthopedic surgeon from Ramsay Sime Darby Healthcare. He joins us to talk about our joints. Thank you very much for joining us, Doc.
Thank you very much for having me here, Gerard.
It's a pleasure and honor.
First of all, I'd like to wish Malaysians Selamat Hari Raya. Well, the question of whether sports is dangerous for knees, I often get patients who come in, and when I tell them that, look, maybe you should start doing some sports, they always say, Doctor, I've come to you with knee pain. Why are you telling me to do sports? Now, so the general belief is that sports is actually bad for your knees, but numerous studies have actually shown us that sports is indeed good for your knees. And it's not only, like for instance, if you take running, it's not only folks who have been running from the time they were young, but even people who take up running at a much later age. It's been shown to be good.
Right. But when you talk about running, they say now that form is very important, whether you're doing running, doing weights, so on and so forth. All these things come into play when it comes to form and keeping yourself healthy and having healthy joints at that. What are your thoughts on this?
Yes, form is absolutely, it's very important. A lot of times when someone comes in and says that they have pain from running, we need to assess things like their form and to see if they have any malalignments or any pre-existing problems that would possibly cause pain.
Now, there are a couple of reasons as to why sports is dangerous for your knees when it comes to diagnosing it. Can you walk us through that, perhaps?
I think, if you're looking at reasons why sports is good, on the contrary to popular belief, running, for instance, there's two reasons why that's been postulated as to why running is actually good. One of them is, again, back to the question of obesity. Someone who has run at some point in time or who is running now obviously has a lower body weight than the general population. And that's a very important factor, because even the laziest person would take about 2,000 to 3,000 steps in a day, and that's 2,000 times you're putting that much weight through your knee. Now, the other thing is also a very scientific finding where they've looked at patients who have early arthritis, osteoarthritis. Osteoarthritis, as you know, is a degenerative condition of the knee that leads to knee pain. they've taken joint fluid from patients with early osteoarthritis in a number of patients, and they have put them on an exercise regime, half of them in an exercise regime and half continuing with their daily lifestyle. And they found that when they repeated the joint fluid test, there were less inflammatory markers in the knees of those who exercised. And you know that osteoarthritis, there's a very big inflammatory component in this as well.
Right.
So that's how they came to this conclusion.
So is it suffice to say that it is safe, running is safe, and it's absolutely safe for your joints, especially your knees and your ankles?
Nothing is absolutely safe, and nothing is black or white in medicine. There's always, a lot of grays. But generally, we need to, if you've been walking or running and you have pain, then you should get it checked. You sometimes could have pre-existing malalignment problems. You could have things like flat feet, or some deformities, or like you mentioned.
You talk about
posture.
malalignment. When you talk, what is malalignment? Is it a maltracking of the knee?
Maltracking is a form of malalignment. So you've got your knee cap, which is the bone in front, the patella. So that could maltrack. It could run on the outside instead of running in the groove. You can have what's called valgus alignment, which means that the knee is too knock-kneed or you're too bow-legged. You could have flat foot deformities. So all these need to be fixed. Sometimes, most of the time, with just things like prosthetics, insoles in your shoes, things like that, muscle retraining, and then progress to whatever activities that you're going to do.
Right. So we just talked about running or brisk walking. Things like this all come under one category. So there's marathon runners, there's people who run on tracks, there's different types of running. And like you said, there are gray areas which we can talk about later if we do have time. But when you talk about sports, there are just so many different sports. Let's talk about other sports. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, when we talk about sports in general, there are two types of injuries that we can talk about. One is an accidental injury, which could happen in any sport. Right? You could be cycling and drop and fall off a bike, or you could be running and fall and break your limbs. But these are rare. When in the rare instance that you have such an injury, then that needs to be addressed. Like if you have a broken bone, that needs to be looked at. But there's another type of injury called an overuse injury. This can occur both in children as well as in adults. In children, I see it very commonly in school kids who are playing football once or twice a week, and then they get into a tournament, and then right after the exams they get into 7 days a week of training.
That's overusing the joints.
And then they come in with sometimes some of them are limping, they've got swelling of the joint, and they've got intense pain. Now that is an overuse injury in a child. In adults, when we're middle aged and we find that we're getting a little bit obese and breathless, and then we decide, we think that, I've been in the MSSM. I used to play badminton for the state, so I'm going to go out there and play. And these are called the weekend warriors. So your body is sort of not yet, even though you used to do it 30 years ago, your body, your muscles, tendons, ligaments, bones are all not adapted to this sort of activity, and you put on significant amount of weight. So you tend to get overuse injuries in those situations as well.
Right. So now with overuse injuries, there is a way of treating these injuries. How would you treat them?
Well, for children, we would tell them to tone down on their intensity of
rest and recuperate. So to
rest
speak.
and recuperate. Instead of training 7 days a week, 3 days a week, lesser hours. We tell a lot of times we find children doing someone who runs would also be in the soccer team, would also be in the rugby team. So it's a lot of lower limb usage. We tell them to cross train, do a bit of swimming, do a bit of tennis, as opposed to just doing running sports. In adults, we tell them to lose weight and do some weight training exercises, and sort of gradually get into the sport.
Now, When you talk about sports for middle age and the younger generation, it's good. But for people who have just retired and want to take up sports, some of us are worried about taking up sports. They say when you're older, it's not safe to take up sports. Your thoughts on this?
I think it's absolutely safe. I mean, I wouldn't say it's absolutely safe, but before you decide to embark on some of this, I think you should have a good medical examination done, have your heart checked, see a cardiologist, make sure your blood parameters are all okay, and get into a sport gradually.
Right.
It is important because it reduces the incidence of osteoarthritis, reduces the incidence of osteoporosis. If you look at Tun, you see him on a tandem bicycle. There are videos going around. He's on a horse at 92. It keeps you intelligent. It keeps your higher mental faculties working. Keeps your cardiovascular status healthy. So absolutely, it's safe. It's just that you've got to to get into it gradually, and you should have a proper medical examination before you do that.
Now, people who usually come to you with the knee pain, what is your advice to them? People come with knee pain for different reasons. Yeah? A lot of people come in with knee pain, but they can't sometimes point out where exactly it's hurting. Sometimes it's referred pain. So how do you work with these people, so to speak?
Well, when in Malaysia, when someone comes to you with pain, it's usually pretty advanced. They've tried everything. They've tried the Sensei. They've tried buying something off the
Doctor's
pharmacy.
always the last resort.
There's Dr. Google.
Yeah.
So after they've consulted the Sensei and Dr. Google, then when they know they're not getting better, so they usually have a problem. It takes a very big effort for them to come and see a doctor. So most of the time they are sports injuries that I treat. So I ask them what exactly they've been doing, what's the intensity, when did they start, was there a long break between when they did it the last time? Because a lot of times it is overuse. It's patients who think that at 40s, they're as good as they were when they're in their 20s. So you by getting a bit of a history, you sort of know what's going on. But sometimes there are also injuries. There could be overuse injuries, or there could be injuries in a ligament, or say a meniscus in the knee. So that would come from clinical examination. Referred pain, yes, you can get a lot of back problems referring to with referred pain to the knee. So that's important to differentiate, and that's where we come in and we examine. Occasionally, we may need to go further and do an X-ray or an MRI, and advise them accordingly.
Right.
Based on.
Just hold that thought. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll find out more about knee problems right here on Medical Today. We're joined by Dr. Siva Kumar. He's a consultant orthopedic surgeon from Ramsay's Sime Darby Healthcare. Stay with us. This is Medical Today on the Bernama News Channel.
Laporan pelbagai dimensi memaparkan isu semasa, pelancongan, warisan dan budaya dari dalam dan luar negara. Saksikan jurnal bernama setiap Isnin di Bernama News Channel. Semuanya tentang anda.
Sandal Group is now extending its business into the major sectors of the production and reproduction of heavy vehicles, finance and insurance, as well as logistics and transportation. GV Resources provide its utmost to secure its customers with the best anti-theft systems. Genesis Academy, educating its students with the latest and most complete knowledge of business management.
Hello and welcome back to Medical Today. I'm Jared Ratnam and we're joined by Dr. Sivakumar Araratnam, a consultant orthopedic surgeon from Ramsay Sime Darby Healthcare. And we're talking about knee problems. Now, you do a lot of work with people who have knee problems, sports injuries, so on and so forth, as an orthopedic surgeon. Do you practice what you preach about, keeping your joints supple by exercising? And what else do you do that helps you with mobility?
Well, about 4 years ago, when I was probably carried away with work, I put on a lot of weight. I was breathless climbing a flight of stairs. I couldn't go through the day without feeling tired and listless. And I decided I needed to do something about that. So it's been ages since I've exercised. So I decided to get up and start running. I think I ran out of my house for about 800 meters and I was breathless and I was thinking, how on earth am I going to make my way back? But I persisted because I knew the science that was involved, and I decided if I can't run, I'm going to walk. And so I did what I tell everyone to do now, start by walking. So I walked and I built up to walking about 30 minutes 3 times a day, 3 times a week. And then I got into a walk-run routine. So when I could do 30 minutes 3 times a week, I started trying to improve the distance in that 30 minutes. So every time I went out, I tried to cover a longer distance. So eventually I had to run, and so there was a walk-run, and then I started running for the whole entire distance.
Right, so when you said a walk-run, how far do you walk? How far do you run?
So my idea was 30 minutes. The first time I looked at, you have an app on your phone that tells you have walked 2.8 kilometers. So I just told myself that every time I went out there, I had to be better than the last time. So it'd be 2.9, 3.1, 3.2. Eventually, you can't walk fast enough. So you've got to run maybe 200 meters or 500 meters, and that gets better and better as you go. And now, from that 4 years ago, I've never run more than 10 kilometers prior to that as a young person. Now I run marathons, 42 kilometers. My bike, I can bike 200 kilometers.
But it's easier for you because you know the science to this, or did you have to?
Well, it's
really
simple. It's just that walk. You see, I get patients who come in and say, "Doctor, I've been running all my life, and I've just taken a break for 20 years, and I started running 10 kilometers 3 times a week, and then I've got this swelling in my knee." Well, that's precise. I don't need to examine you. I know exactly what's wrong with you. That's overuse. Your body is not used to, has not been doing that for the last 20 years. So you've got to start from scratch, and eventually you'll get there.
Right. So. Whoever you are, if you have a problem, start from scratch, and of course try.
Regardless of who you were before.
Right.
Regardless of how active you were before.
Now let's talk about the role of surgery. Let's move into surgery now. What is the role of surgery with regards to sports injuries?
Well, in instances where you have injuries, like for instance, you have an anterior cruciate ligament rupture. Anterior cruciate ligaments are ligaments in the knee. So an anterior cruciate ligament actually prevents your knee from translating forwards.
Right.
So you've got multiple ligaments. One of these ligaments prevents this movement. Now, when you have an ACL rupture, for instance, from sports, you generally, if you're planning to continue in sports, you would have to have that looked at, and you probably have to have surgery for that. So there are certain instances where surgery is recommended, because if you didn't do surgery and if you continue to be active, then it's been shown the world over that your incidence of getting arthritis in your knee is higher.
But when you speak to sportsmen, especially martial artists, they say when you perform surgery, say like if it's an ACL tear or something with regards to your joints, your life changes. Is that true?
Not entirely. It depends on the extent of the injury. Now, I run and I cycle, so I tend to attract a lot of patients who, from word of mouth, people who run and cycle. So, I have this standing joke with some of my patients who, I have a guy who I used to cycle, who after I did an ACL reconstruction with him, I started cycling with him, about 2 years down the line. And then I started complaining in mock.
It's like an added service cycle. The guy
well, I
fixing
mean, you make friends, and then and so then I started complaining because here I was struggling up the hill, and that guy makes it up faster. So I said, maybe I shouldn't have done such a good job in you. So, well, if you're a professional athlete, there are a lot of things that goes into, your conditioning and things like that. But generally, if you're someone out there to keep healthy, if you have a problem, if it needs to be fixed, then get it fixed and move on. Rather than to say, look, I'm going to retire from exercise altogether because I have this injury and I don't want it to get worse. It is probably going to get worse if you didn't continue exercising, because you're going to put on weight and all that anti-inflammatory advantages of exercising you're going to lose out on.
Right. Now, as a professional or as someone who sees people with sports injuries, I'm sure you've seen some that are less common but are still out there. Can you walk us through some of these other injuries that you've encountered?
Yes. It's dangerous to tell someone with a knee problem that you should run, and because it is a statistic. It just means that if I had 100 people with early arthritis and we made them run, we made 50 run and 50 not run with the same pattern of arthritis, probably the risk of getting a knee replacement would be higher, would probably 30 out of the 50 who didn't exercise, and probably in 10 out of the 50 who did. So it's a statistic. If you came in and I said, go run, and you had, and I told you 5 years later you had to have a knee replacement done, you've got to understand that it makes you better, but it doesn't totally solve your problem. But there are instances in which we see patients who are runners who've been running for a long time. These days you get people who do ultra marathons, 100, 200, 250 kilometers, and then they come in with knee pain, and they've got specific problems because of malalignment issues. They've got a bit of bow legs, and so they load the internal compartment of their knee, the inner compartment, and then there is a question of telling them to stop, or is there something that can be done? Because if you let them wear it out till they need a knee replacement, that's the end of their running. You can't run with a knee replacement. You can do everything else, but you can't run. So there are these surgeries to correct the alignment. What we do is we actually realign the leg by cutting below the joint. And 10 years ago when I used to do them, you used to be out of action for about 3 to 4 months. Now we use computer to do them. We use computer-specific surgery, computer-guided surgeries. And the implants and the surgeries are so sophisticated, I can do an operation on you and get you to walk the next day, of course with an aid. And you're running in about 3 to 4 months. So, and you're probably going to be running for the next 15 to 20 years, as opposed to telling you to stop running 5 months down the line, just because you have progressed to a stage of arthritis which is not going to last you for a very long time.
Now, what happens if someone comes along, comes seek for your treatment, your help, and he or she has end-stage arthritis with regards to the knee? What are the options out there?
Sometimes people come in with a completely gone joint which is completely worn out. So they're bone on bone, and they've come in, and I tell them, instead of beating around the bush, I tell them, look, you're at a stage where nothing's going to help. Probably not even an injection, because you're rubbing bone on bone. It's like rubbing 2 rocks together and you're trying to lubricate it. That's not going to work. And you're going to need a knee replacement operation. And I like looking at their response, because most of the time they're like, that's the end of the world kind of thing. I'm not going to go there. So I asked them, so if you had relatives or friends who've had it done, they say, oh yeah, this guy did it, didn't walk, this guy's in a wheelchair, someone's not got out of bed. It is never that bad. The way we do it these days, of course, you've got to look for a good facility. You've got to look at someone who's done it fairly and a fair number of cases. These days, when I do a knee replacement, if it is a total knee replacement, I get most of my patients to walk day of surgery. So if I do them in the morning, you're walking by the evening. In the worst case scenario, you're walking the next day. And some patients, maybe less than 50%, are actually climbing stairs the morning after surgery. So that's how good it is. And you've got other alternatives. You've got half knee replacements, and you've got the realignment surgery where you're not quite full stage, end stage arthritis. You can still opt for a realignment operation. So the outcomes these days are really, really good with knee replacement surgeries. And
you should not fret when you hear about knee replacement surgeries.
You should not do it at an early stage. If you look at your X-ray and you don't see your bones touching, and if someone recommends a knee replacement, then you probably should get a second opinion. I encourage my patients when they're in doubt, I tell them go get another opinion. But when you have bone-on-bone disease and you need it, it's best to get it done, because if you don't and you have it in one knee, you're going to use that knee as a walking stick, and you're going to put your weight in the other knee and give yourself 3 months. Your other good knee is going to get affected. You're going to have back problems, and you're going to age. You're just going to get old.
It's a downward spiral.
It's a downward spiral.
Very quickly, we've got about a minute and a half. Your closing remarks with regards to keeping your joints healthy, more so your knees and ankles.
I think watch your weight, watch what you eat, try to lose weight as much as possible, and exercise. See your doctor. Even if you have early stage arthritis, we divide the knee into several compartments, so we can actually recommend sports which are safe for your particular knee, which may not be safe for someone else. Someone may come in and say, "Oh, doctor, I heard cycling is good." Cycling is not good for you. Walking is probably better, but I may give the different advice to someone else who has a different pattern of arthritis. But whatever it is, stay healthy. Even if you have very advanced arthritis, try to do something like swimming or brisk walking or something that keeps you active and keeps you young and vital.
Movement always helps.
Movement helps.
On that note, we'd like to thank Dr. Sivakumar Araratnam, a consultant orthopedic surgeon from Ramsay Sime Darby Healthcare, joining us here on Medical Today. Thank you very much for staying with us.
Gain insights from the people with the capacity to translate vision into reality. Interviews with corporate leaders at 8:30 p.m. Monday, only on BNC.
Tahukah anda apa yang sebenarnya berlaku kepada isi setelefon bimbit anda? Membuangnya ke dalam bakul sampah akan hanya mengakibatkan tapak pelupusan menjadi sesak. Tahukah anda lebih 42 juta isi setelefon bimbit tidak dilupuskan dengan cara yang betul? Dan jumlah ini akan terus meningkat. Ini berpotensi menyebabkan bahan toksik kimia teresap ke dalam tanah. Secara perlahan-lahan, alam sekitar akan tercemar sekaligus menimbulkan pelbagai masalah kesihatan kepada manusia. Tahukah anda bahawa 90% daripada bahan-bahan yang digunakan untuk membuat telefon bimbit boleh dikita semula? Ianya boleh diguna semula untuk menghasilkan apa sahaja termasuk barangan elektrik. Berita baiknya ialah MCMC telah mengambil inisiatif memperkenalkan kempen e-sisa telefon bimbit atau mobile e-waste. MCMC bersama syarikat-syarikat telekomunikasi menubuhkan pusat pengumpulan di cawangan yang mengambil bahagian untuk orang ramai melupuskan e-sisa telefon bimbit mereka. Dengan 72 cawangan di seluruh negara termasuk TM, U-Mobile, Maxis, Digi, Celcom dan Altel, anda boleh melupuskan e-sisa telefon bimbit dengan mudah dan pada bila-bila masa. Sertai kami untuk mencapai kempen 1 juta kita semula e-sisa telefon bimbit. Lakukanlah perubahan untuk kebaikan dunia, alam sekitar dan masa depan. Untuk maklumat lanjut, layari mobileewaste.mcmc.gov.my. Inisiatif ini dibawakan kepada anda oleh Industri Komunikasi Malaysia bersama MCMC.
Hello and welcome back to Medical Today. I'm Jared Ratnam. Of course, a while ago we spoke about knee problems and what we can do and things we need to know about knee problems. There are lots of myths with regards to exercising, but that's all good. When you have advice from professionals, you take this advice seriously. Now, speaking of a professional, I did speak to the president of the Malaysian Medical Association, better known as MMA, Dr. Ravindran R. Naidu, who talked to me about the oversupply of doctors in the country. There's an argument about an oversupply, and then there's doctors working in government hospitals who work 48-hour shifts. So where do you find the balance with regards to this? Here was an interview with me speaking to Dr. Ravindran. Let's take a look at this interview. Dr. Ravi, thank you very much for joining us right here on Medical Today now. You're the president of the Malaysian Medical Association, better known as the MMA, and you've been there for a long time. So you've seen the industry change from what it was to what it is today. And I guess what we want to broach with regards to this segment is the oversupply of doctors within the country. Now, when we look at Malaysia as a country, as a nation, which includes Sabah and Sarawak, our brothers in Sabah and Sarawak, what is the population ratio for doctors within Malaysia?
Thank you, Gerard. The population ratio at the moment currently is for every one doctor is for 633 patients. Mm-hmm. Now, that is the current scenario.
One doctor for 633 patients.
Yes.
Is this good? Is this not so good? As a developing country, are we doing okay?
Well, the rightful number should be 1:400. Mm-hmm. Then that is the
this is a WHO standard?
WHO standards, mm-hmm. Yes.
1 to 400.
400.
And for us to achieve that, how long is it going to take?
Actually, we should be able to achieve it immediately, mm-hmm. because we have enough doctors at the moment.
Right. Having enough doctors, does that also address the problem of quality of doctors within the country?
The quality is something that we have to see, because what's happening is in the last couple of years, many of the students were taken into medical colleges without the correct requirements.
Prerequisite or requirements.
Prerequisites, mm-hmm. Yes. So therefore, you will find that some of them are not up to standard, mm-hmm. at the moment.
Right.
Yes.
Now, one would think that with the technology we have and with the constant barrage of information we have, standards would be up now. With all this in play, you say the prerequisite or requirements isn't good. Now, to take this a step back, before we talk about the oversupply, what's happening here?
Well, the reason is this. Many medical colleges or medical institutions are not up to the mark. Mm-hmm. They probably do not have enough qualified lecturers. They do not have enough training programs for the students. So because of this, you have this difficulty.
And how has this gone unchecked for so many years?
Well, the Malaysian Qualifying Authority have done accreditation. They say they have done accreditation. We believe they have done accreditation, but we do not know what is happening in the colleges after the accreditation is done.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's also talk about an oversupply with regards to doctors within the country. Now, there are two different narratives. Now, one is we don't have enough doctors here yet with regards to population ratio. We're still getting there, or we're soon to work our way there. But the other narrative is that we have an oversupply. So help us find the balance in understanding this.
Okay. What's happened now is we have young medical graduates. We have approximately 40 to 42 medical programs within the country, churning out approximately 3,000 to 4,000 doctors every year. Mm-hmm. And we get another about 1,000 doctors coming in from overseas. So we have about 4,000 to 5,000 doctors coming out or graduating every year. Mm-hmm. But the problem lies here is there is not enough positions in the government sector to train all these young doctors. Mm-hmm. So what is happening is many of them are waiting between 8 months to 1 year to mm-hmm. get a posting as a house officer.
Right. So
that is the problem.
they're waiting 8 months to a year to get a posting as a house officer. I'm sure when you started practicing, and from what you've said, you started practicing about 30 years ago. It was different 30 years ago.
Oh, yes. That time what happened is there was an acute shortage of doctors. The minute we put in our application, within 2 weeks we were given a posting.
Within 2 weeks. So
within 2 weeks.
2 weeks back then, today it's 11 to 12 months,
Yes.
close to a year,
Yes.
waiting for posting. So in this period of them not being given work or being given a posting, what happens? How does the MMA help these people at this
Okay,
point?
what is happening now is many of them who have not been employed have gone and become Grab drivers. They have been working in McDonald's, KFC, and many of them have worked with their family. The latest I heard now is they're working as a lorry attendant, you know. And many of them are helping out in their family business if they have one.
Right. Do you speak to them? Do you have conversations with these
Oh yes,
young
we
people?
we have what you call the help doc, a sort of a helpline in MME, whereby if you have a problem, you can call us, and we have got several calls pertaining to this issue.
Now, the Malaysian government has imposed a 5-year moratorium on medical courses. And this is because of their concern of an oversupply in the country, or rather an oversupply for doctors.
Yes.
Now, how would you further explain this to us lay people who want to gain a better understanding in this? Because at the end of it all, it's everyone who wants to send their kids to medical schools and
Yes.
of course see them through this, because it is one of the most successful careers, or at least that's how we have all been conditioned.
Yes. Well, this moratorium actually is very timely, and the reason being is they have raised the standards for entrance into a medical school, and number two, what has happened is they have prevented new medical programs being established in Malaysia, which means then what has happened is in the public universities, they've reduced the intake. But this they can only do in public universities and not in the private universities.
Right. But with a backlog that we're seeing now, and with MMA stepping in, do you put together dialogues with various stakeholders to see how we can ease the flow of doctors into the system, well trained, with the proper prerequisite or requirements to get into med school, get out of med school, and get into a posting?
We have actually proposed to the Ministry of Health to come up with what you call an aptitude test for those who are interested in doing medicine. That means you go and have an aptitude test done, and if you pass the aptitude test, then you go into medical school. Or the other alternative is we have an entrance examination. So which means though you have finished your A levels or O levels, you come and sit for an entrance examination and before you get into a medical school.
Right. But with the problems we're having now, it's only safe to say that a lot of them are once again going to be leaving the country because there's no work in the country for them.
Unfortunately, our degrees in Malaysia are not recognized in almost all countries. The reason being is, I think countries like Australia, UK, they have got their own examinations. For you to practice in Australia, you need to go and sit their board exams. You need to pass their exams before you can get an employment there. And even if you pass the exam, there is no guarantee that you will be employed there.
Right. But what are the chances? You talked about the quality of doctors passing out in Malaysia, which are questionable. Now, when they go overseas, are they able to handle board examinations overseas?
I mean, I'm quite sure that that is going to be a difficult thing for them, you know. I mean, their exams are very high standards in many of these countries.
Right.
So unless you are really good or you have really put in all the effort, I don't think it's going to be
So it's something parents should take cognizance of. If you're getting your kids into med school, you need to, they need to be passionate about
passionate.
it.
My thing is this, you want to be a doctor, we don't say do not become a doctor, but you must have the passion to be a doctor.
Right.
Everybody can become a doctor, but everybody may not be a successful doctor.
Right. There's a flip side to this argument here. Now, we say there's an oversupply, and we're also talking about boys and girls who are leaving the country to look for jobs overseas. But then again, the flip side to this argument is that some of them work within the medical systems in public service, and they're sleep deprived because we don't have enough doctors to cover them.
Yeah. In actual fact, what is happening now as a house officer, they do have long hours. Of course, the Ministry of Health has recommended a 65 to 75-hour work week per week. Mm-hmm. But sometimes what happens is a medical profession is not like any other profession where you have a patient who comes in maybe 10 minutes before your time is off. You can't just drop the patient and walk off and say, I'll come and continue it tomorrow. You need to do the preliminary part of it and then probably hand it over to your colleague to take over. So this extends the working hours. Now, that's for house officers. For medical officers, what happens? They are the next level. So they also work very long hours, sometimes 24 hours, 36 hours they do work. And that is where the sleep deprivation comes about. But we have advised these doctors who have the sleep deprivation that when they finish their duty, to please have a rest in the hospital before they go back out there, before they drive.
Right. Now, we've got about a minute left in this interview. What are your aspirations as the president of the Malaysian Medical Association with regards to the practice of medicine in this country and, of course, doctors, boys and girls passing out of med school?
Gerard, my take on this is MMA should be an umbrella body. All the young or the doctors in this country to become members of MMA, whereby MMA can do more for these people in terms of, for those who are, there's an oversupply, we find them alternative positions like, you know, they can do IT, they can become doctors in a pharma company. There's so many other options actually. And we would like to be there to help all these doctors. We would like to be with the government of the day. We are working closely with the government, with the Ministry of Health, with the minister. And now with the new government, we are hoping that the minister is there to sort our problems out. I'm talking about the registered medical practitioners in this country.
Mm-hmm. With that, of course, the other thing one has to do as a doctor is to sign up with the MMA.
With the Malaysian Medical Association.
Right. Yes. On that note, Doctor, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Gerard.
It was a pleasure and an honor having you right
Thank
here on a Medical Day.
Thank you so much.
That was a very interesting interview with the president of the Malaysian Medical Association, better known as MMA. We spoke to Dr. Ravindran R. Naidu, who is the president of that association. A lot of work on his plate with regards to finding equilibrium or balance when it comes to the oversupply or the demand of doctors in Malaysia, and also with regards to the medical schools in Malaysia. Before we sign off, very interestingly, we have something for you. We have a bottle of vitamins to give you. All you need to do is send us an email. Send it to ask@medicaltoday.my. That's ask@medicaltoday.my. Just send us an email saying, I want some vitamins, and we're going to send it to you. On that note, I'm Jared Ratnam signing off for this episode of Medical Today, right here on the Bernama News channel. You have a great day ahead.
幸能趁三亚阿摩拉这个那么好的机会，就到全马各地旅游，我还能了解各州的文化。我们一起来开始我们的旅程吧。
Listen to views of industry captains. Analyze and examine trends and projections. Gain market insights from subject matter experts. Biz Talk every Friday only on BNC.
Brings you the latest in current affairs, lifestyle and entertainment, as well as one-on-one discussions with fascinating personalities. Only on Norhana News Channel.